Okay,
It's
gonna be around 5 minutes for you guys. Well, I hold the general smart person opinion that Big Bang Theory sucks. There are pivotal characters in both shows that are clearly hinted at as having autism, right? Asperger's, which is
Asthma.
Consider the way that they treat the character of Sheldon in Big Bang Theory versus the way they treat Abed.
Yeah.
And if you listen, does anyone listen to Dan Harmon's podcast?
No.
Yeah, this guy does. The stand-up does. He's kind of, if you haven't read anything, Dan Harmon is incredibly intelligent. Like, he's described by most people as being like a guy that could be curing cancer, but instead is writing. I think this is interesting because this sort of puts forth, like, this study group is sort of like almost like this Star Trek-like utopia, where race doesn't matter, where gender, the genders are equal, and also that somebody who would have what we would call perhaps a developmental disability, right, is instead celebrated for what he's good at, rather than constantly bemoaning the fact that he's different, right? So, anyone have anything else they'd like to add to that?
Abed gives you soup because soup is better.
That's right.
Abed is better.
Abed's better, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
What's the best? What was your guys' favorite part of the bottle episode? Best joke, best line in the bottle episode.
I just love when Jeff starts ripping the carpet up.
That's
the
a good
moment I was
one.
like, this show's real. This show's for real now.
They have carpet.
Yeah. They put some money into ripping the carpet up.
I just
Well,
love
you
when
know,
Pierce
that's-
starts taking off his clothes.
Normally, a bottle episode on a show is a way of saving money.
Oh yeah.
That's why they do it, is because they don't have to build or buy a new set for it. So if you do X amount of bottle episodes, you might save yourself about $1 million. But this clearly didn't save them any money, right? Like they tore apart the set. So it's kind of taking that and putting it. Can anyone think, like, you guys know what a bottle episode is? I mean,
Anyone
it's
know?
It's when they stay in the same room.
When they're all.
yeah, it's where you take one setting and the circumstances keep them in that setting. So for example, in Everybody Loves Raymond, there's a bottle episode where the power's out.
Right.
So they just stay in the living room and the power's out, right? Or Seinfeld has a bottle episode where they're in a parking garage. Yeah, that's that.
And usually there's not very many extras. So you don't
Yeah,
have to pay for
no extras, no new character. Who did they have besides the people listed
Dean.
in the bottle episode? The Dean's listed.
The Dean's one of the list.
Oh.
He's a featured cast member by
Monkey.
season 2.
The cleaning lady. Wait, no.
That
No.
Dragons.
Sorry, I was really
But
excited
Dungeons and
about
Dragons, that's almost a bottle episode. That
Yeah,
almost
Yeah.
qualifies as a bottle episode. And yet those are two of the best episodes, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about I feel like the Dungeons and Dragons one is kind of fresher
Yeah.
in our minds, because I'm already forgetting the bottle episode. What's awesome about that episode?
They don't leave, and yet you're with them the entire story. And
Yes.
typically, like Devin, when we first were watching the show together, we weren't actually together. We were watching at the same pace, and we talked about this. How usually it's actually sitting in on a Dungeons and Dragons game is not nearly as exciting as that show is.
Mm-hmm.
Like you sit there and you can listen to people explain, and even if they're a good storyteller, you're still not taken.
You have to be
really
playing,
captured.
right?
You have to be playing. You have to want to be there and really have this concept of the character. And so the fact that they, as characters, can create a concept of a character that don't even match them, typically, unless it's Britta, it feels so. I don't know how he did. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah.
Voiceovers.
I think for me, what makes this show so unique is not necessarily, every episode is so unique in itself, but what really captures me every time is the subtleties of each character and how much their characters are developed. And so it's like we're all having inside jokes with these characters, and so you can sit down and analyze an episode, but it's not really the episode itself that's holding the show together. It's these characters, and that's why I watch it all the time.
Yeah.
Something that I love about that episode is that usually in a show or a movie or something, when they're doing something that involves another story, they will take you there, where it's we're going to their imagination. We're going to see the castles and all that stuff, but they never do that. It is literally just them playing the game.
Yeah, you know what this episode reminds me is, do you guys know who Edgar Wright is?
Yeah.
That directed Shaun of the Dead and Scott
Oh,
Pilgrim.
okay.
I was listening to an interview with him. If you guys like Community and you like hearing smart people talk, listen to the Mark Maron WTF podcast. It's a wealth of information. Start with the Dan Harmon episode or the Donald Glover episode because they're great. It's just like an hour conversation. Anyway, Edgar Wright talks about how the key moment in him discovering how to direct comedies was when he realized that the camera could be funny,
Yeah.
right? And if you notice, they do the entire time, despite not having like really that much costumes or changing set, the camera is mimicking Lord of the Rings constantly in little moments. There's the slow motion, there's the pan away,
The music.
there's the guy looking and then turning away. Like it's the camera is hilarious in that episode.
I was gonna say, like, along with the camera, how the writing works when Annie's describing.
Yeah.
The sex scene? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no words. It's
Yeah.
hilarious because of the camera and just.
Yes.
Well, Annie, she's a really good actor.
Well, it's like the Hitchcock
It
rule,
really
right?
works,
Yeah.
You guys know the Hitchcock rule?
No.
Hitchcock he started this with a lower budget, and what he realized after he got a bigger budget was that the things that he developed in a smaller budget, whereas he couldn't really show on-screen killings and he couldn't show, the big, that was that whatever you worked up in your mind would be scarier.
Right.
So like in Psycho, you never see the knife go in, or he keeps things off screen, or there's no sound. And I think it's the same thing with comedy. There's no way whatever Alison Brie was saying was as funny as that voiceover going and everyone's reactions to it.
Like Troy's reaction in that.
Well,
Great.
it went up in, right? There's a rule in comedy. I'm sorry, this is turning into like a comedy lecture. But there's the rule of threes, right? So the first thing we see is we keep seeing shots to reactions, right? So we kind of see like Jeff's like quizzical look. And then we see Shirley like scream, and then we see Troy taking notes. Like they up it each time. Each time it's a funnier reaction. Right?
How long is that? How wonderful.
Yeah, and that's almost like
for an appropriate time or spoons for an appropriate
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
both these episodes also have incredible buttons going to commercial, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, tell them we're having a bottle episode, right? Like that's the best possible time to go to commercial. You're not turning it away, right? Becky had something.
Oh no, it was just going back to what you were saying before about how like whatever the audience can make in their head being so much funnier. That just always makes me think of Gary Larson cartoons. If anybody's like a fan of those and how those work, it's really true. Like anything you imagine in the moment, it's always like afterwards in those.
Yeah, that's Far Side, right?
Farsight,
Yeah, like so-
Farsight is so good.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is just off.
Yeah.
It's like reacting to something that just happened, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have any? Yeah.
Like Chris was talking about the complexity of the characters. I think that's one thing that you can use to predict the longevity of the show. Like, because when you look at a lot of shows like The Big Bang Theory, they're not real people; they're caricatures. And so after a while, you just run out of things to do with them because they're not like real people who continue to develop and have nuance, and they don't interact with each other in a genuine way because they're not genuine.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the cool thing about Community is the more time goes on, the more those inside jokes become more developed.
Well, I think it kind of reminds me of a show that's almost sort of on a similar trajectory that was a drama. Have you guys ever heard of The Wire?
Yeah.
On HBO. It's an extremely intricate show. So like it'll be like there'll be like an extra in season 1, like just this like high school girl that pulls up and gets drugs, and then like in season 4 they'll be at like an AA meeting and she'll be there.
Wow.
Like it's just incredibly well thought out. It's almost like reading a book. And that's the same thing. Like we were talking about the Beetlejuice thing, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, what's his name? The professor in 3rd season.
I don't remember the. But
Michael
the
K. Williams is the actor.
Yeah, the biology
Yeah,
teacher.
the just got out of prison.
Oh, yeah,
He's
yeah.
from The Wire.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that's where they got him.
Yeah.
Is he was Omar, this guy, this stick-up artist in The Wire, who's like his like catchphrase was like, "Man's gotta have a code." So there's a line in the Law and Order episode where they're like, "Thanks." He goes, "Nah, man, man's gotta have a code." So who's playing into that. Cool. Anyone have anything? Yeah.
I liked how much they made us care for Neil. I felt like it was almost kind of like a cyclical thing. Like we cared about Neil because he really loved Dungeons and Dragons, and we really cared about Dungeons and Dragons because it meant a lot to Neil.
Yeah. I mean, this is an incredible example of being able to inject somebody that had been there before, making them important for one episode, and then transitioning them out without us feeling like, oh, like what are we missing? Like he's completely critical to this episode, and I don't really think he shows up till the next paintball episode, right?
Yeah, and then they also bring him back. There's the second Dungeons and Dragons episode.
Yeah.
And they make he walks in the background. So they're talking in the second Dungeons and Dragons episode. They're trying to help a dad and his son reconnect, and they're talking about the reason that they should do the Dungeons and Dragons. And they're like, oh yeah, we helped fabulous Nil, and he walks in the background, and they just have that little moment where he walks in the background. And it's amazing all the little things you'll see in the background of Community.
Yeah.
Things like Fat Nil showing up. They deliver a baby in the background. Of the
There's a
episode.
saga in an episode of Abed delivering a baby.
Yeah.
It's an episode completely about death and like the destruction and decay in the world. And in the whole background, there's the whole message of new life as Abed delivers a baby.
I had like something I was going to add to that. Oh,
Neil?
speaking of season 5, I just want to take an informal poll. Does anyone feel sad about Pierce leaving?
No.
Shame on your house.
I really feel like the show gets better without him. I understand he's a villain, but there's villains. Like they've got Chang, they've got
The best way.
and also Pierce got Dan Harmon fired for season 4.
Yeah, we hate him.
Yeah.
Hey, are we saying that we're sad that Pierce is gone or that Chevy Chase is gone?
I can't separate the two because I think Chevy Chase is just playing Chevy Chase. I think that's just who he is
Well, how
now.
great is it though? Like, how genuine does it make it when you see them hate him on screen? And it's like, they probably really hate
Have
him.
you watched the outtakes? Like when anyone else sort of messes up and kind of goes off, they all are hysterical. Like they've got, and whenever he does it, everyone's just. They just roll their eyes.
There was an interview with Danny Pudi, and they were like, "Oh, how's it working with Chevy Chase?" Like they were all excited, because he's a big deal. He was like, "Well, I don't think that he realizes that I'm in the main cast. Like he doesn't really talk to me. I think he thinks I'm an extra." And he was like, kind of like joking about it, but in the same way, being like, "Yeah, we don't talk." That's interesting seeing that dynamic, knowing what kind of went on in the background with Community, seeing them work that out, right? Yeah.
On screen,
Me
which is
too.
ultimately having him die in a
Truly, I've never been so happy in the game.
Is it the first episode of season 4 where Abed's like dreaming about the show?
It's
Somebody
somebody
else.
And it's like a different actor's playing.
No.
Yeah.
This is totally blocked him out of his memory.
Yeah.
Perfect for me.
So do you guys just pick what, or do we want to talk about what we're going to show next week? Or?
It's in my notebook, which is not